I'd like to start our conversation by asking each of you, and perhaps I'll give Hans to go first. How do you think that that's changing? What does the future hold? What does economic investment and economic relations between South Africa and not only the Netherlands, but European look like going forward? Are we going to see this change in patterns of raw materials leaving and processed materials coming back?
I think absolutely we're in for huge changes driven by new technology, data. I think that the time of export-led industrialization is not going to be the model for developing Africa. I think it is in big data, in technology. That means that South Africa also needs to prepare for this future. I think you see a couple of trends. One is services are becoming every time more important. Two, there's also a tendency to produce more locally. One, because one wants to be more sustainable, but also because technology allows it. If you think of 3D printing in 5-10 years, I think we don't need to import any of this glass from China if we do. We can just simply download the software, put it in a 3D printer, and print it.
Hans, Nigel, what's your take? How do you think that relationship is going to change in the short to medium term, and how do you think it's changed up until now?
Yeah, well, as you said, Nick, we've got a problem because we're standing between these folks and their State Department and hamburgers. So we don't keep this exciting. But I think Hans is right. Look, it is true that if you look at the basket of exports from South Africa to the rest of the world, it's heavily dominated by minerals and mineral products. But that is not where the new investment is coming. In fact, there hasn't been a huge amount of new investment into South Africa in the mining industry. It's been heavily indigenized over the last decade or so. The story, real story, and where we focus our efforts when we're trying to help new entrepreneurs and investors is in services, and in particular digital services. For example, we've opened what we grandly call a tech hub in our young entrepreneurs in the tech space, many of whom are working in new clusters in Braamfontein and in the Cape, with opportunities to scale up, access finance, access mentors in the UK and elsewhere. And that's where we see the growth and the dynamism in the South African economy. The South African economy actually is predominantly a services economy these days, and that's where the growth is going to be in the future. And there is also, thanks to international supply chains, there is a value-added substantial chunk of the South African economy in the form of the car industry, heavily integrated. One of the challenges we are grappling with around Brexit is making sure that as we leave the EU, we don't disrupt those supply chains. But as Hans says, in the future, technology like 3D printing is going to change existing patterns of production in ways which South Africa and the rest of us need to be ready for. So I think as we look to the future, this old story of coming in from the outside to access raw materials is giving way to a more sophisticated and complex picture.
Just in the background, you have this thing called Brexit, where it would seem the UK government is going to set a course to strengthen relations with the Commonwealth states, South Africa being very, very prominent. The fact that we have the part of the royal family, Duke and Duchess of Sussex here not so long ago, is that an indication that you are holding South Africa in very, very high esteem in terms of your plans going forward?
It's two things. First of all, we are excited about Africa and the opportunities that exist in this continent. I think for the first time in my career, I've been working with the British government for nearly 3 decades and investing heavily in extra staff and human resource in our network in Africa. We're opening 5 new posts, so we've reopened already our missions in Lesotho, Eswatini. We're opening in Mali, in Chad, Djibouti, places that we've never had a diplomatic presence before. We are significantly expanding our network of trade and investment offices around the continent to really give life to our ambition to be not only a leading trade partner for Africa, which we are already, but also the leading G7 investor in Africa. And one of the purposes of their Royal Highness's visit here was to underline that ambition and to advertise particular things, in particular the fact that we are holding an All-Africa Investment Summit in London in January, which is going to be a real focal point of our effort to do two things. It really is to highlight the African offer and opportunity to British investors, but also investors who use the City of London as a conduit for routing investment around the world, but also to provide a platform for President Ramaphosa and all his counterparts from Africa to offer their perspectives really of what their particular countries have to offer.